James Cameron is back with his third installment of the Avatar franchise, Avatar Fire and Ash. There's a reason why this is the most anticipated film for me this year. Let's go. So as we know, Avatar Fire and Ash is the third installment of the Avatar franchise, directed by James Cameron. And at this point, if you've been following these movies, you know how the plot goes. But in case you don't, here's a recap of that. Avatar is about these human beings who find and try to colonize this planet called Pandora because it's rich in resources. And the inhabitants, the Na'vi, are very deeply connected to the planet. Jake Sully, played by Sam Worthington, is a crippled Marine that gets thrown into the Avatar project because his twin dies. And because they're twins, Jake's genetic makeup is perfect to pilot an Avatar. And an Avatar is a cultivated Na'vi created for human beings to pilot using science and technology. Jake's mission is to learn the ways of the Amatakaya clan and convince them to leave the sacred tree so the human beings can go there and extract the resources. Obviously, they don't want to do that because why the hell are they going to want to leave their place so aliens can come and destroy their land? Jake ends up switching sides because he falls in love with the chief's daughter, Neytiri, who is played by Zoe Saldana, and it sets him down the path of redemption and destiny. But it also causes his arch nemesis, Colonel Miles Courage, to take matters into his own hands and basically be like, yo, since Jake is a failure, I'm now gonna go here, wipe out the clan, and take the resources by force. However, the Amatakaya clan end up winning the battle, obviously, and Neytiri ends up killing the colonel. Jake then fuses with his avatar, making him a purebred Na'vi. Most of the humans were sent back to Earth except for a select few because they are some of the good guys. About 15 years later, Jake is now the chief of the Amatakaya clan, and him and Neytiri have 4 beautiful kids. One is adopted, and there's also this human child named Spider that was left behind with the good guys because children can't go to the pods to go back to Earth. Everything was right in the world and everybody lived in harmony until the Fire Nation, I mean the Earthlings, came back to Pandora. And this time Miles Courage is now a clone who was implanted into a Na'vi using science. I'm not gonna try to explain it, but it made a lot of sense in the second film. And now he wants to pick up where his predecessor left off, which is kill Jake and take the resources. And things change for Jake and Neytiri because now that they have children, they are realizing that like, hey, we can't fight and risk it all anymore because we also have to be able to protect our family and we have to protect our people. So instead of fighting, they become war refugees or asylum seekers in a tribe of the Metkaina people who live by the water, which I thought was amazing because now we're seeing the planet of Pandora expand. This is where we meet the village leader, his strong-headed wife, as well as their children. The Sullys learn the ways of the Metkaina people, but the colonel finds them searching far and wide like he's looking for a rare Pokemon, which leads to the next great battle where the colonel survives, but this time the Sullys' eldest son does not, setting the tone for a more emotional Fire and Ash. And obviously there's so much more to cover with the side plots, the character arcs and development, but we don't have the time for that, so definitely check them out. Now Avatar Fire and Ash, the story continues shortly after the Way of Water, with the Sullys living with the Metkaina people and they're grieving the loss of their eldest son differently and individually. The middle child, Loak, is essentially going through survivor's guilt, blaming himself for his brother's loss. Neytiri is dealing with the grief being shown through her hatred towards human beings, and Jake is distracting himself by preparing for a battle that he is predicting will happen soon. I appreciated how these characters were grieving the loss differently and they were viewing the world differently as well, but the world doesn't just stop moving and things are being put into motion. For instance, the colonel is back and this time he's in an alliance. Enter Varang of the Manquan clan, or Ash people. Varang is played by Una Chaplin, and if you're probably wondering, hey, that last name sounds familiar, it is because she is the granddaughter of the legend himself, Charlie Chaplin. Varang is also a very powerful figure within this film, but her means are very extreme. The Ash people is very different than what we've been exposed to in the first 2 films. The other clans and tribes worship Awa, their goddess, whereas these people, they do what I perceived as voodoo and dark magic. So now the stage is set for the battle between good and evil, different religions and ways of life, and I have to say that Avatar Fire and Ash is amazing. What I really appreciated about this film, as well as the others, is the way the characters were portrayed. For example, let's take a look at Neytiri. In the first Avatar, we see the strong-headed, curious woman who's very in love with her people and very in love with her environment and her way of life. Then in the Way of Water, we still see the strong-headed woman, but this time she's bashing heads with the Metkaina's village leader's wife, who is a badass in her own right. But now that Neytiri is a mother, we see this more overtly protective side of her. And because she's seen how humans actually are, she's slowly developing that hatred towards them. Rightfully so, though. And in Fire and Ash, she's grieving the loss of her firstborn child, her first son, as well as the fact that she has to leave her culture, leave her people behind. So now that grief is really being turned into hatred, and that hatred is clouding her vision, and because of that hatred, she says and does things that we are not going to be covering right now. But I love being able to experience all of those emotions with her, and Zoe Saldana, being a mom herself, really put on a performance in Fire and Ash. Loak was interesting. His mannerism of understanding the importance of the Sully name, as well as the fact of like, hey, I'm now the only surviving son to these legends. I now need to prove myself. He's very much like Atreus in the God of War films. He knows his father's important. He understands that he needs to listen to his father, but he knows that he can do so much more. He wants to be so much more. And because of that, he's viewed as disobedient and has to go on his own spiritual journey to find himself. And Loak is to Atreus as Jake is to Kratos, because Jake and Kratos, very much war veterans, very much revered to be badasses. But now that they have children, they put their mantle aside and they kind of just like, hey, I'm gonna disown this title of war monster because I don't want that side of me to come out, so I'm destroying my family. But then they realize that they got to go back into the game and really embrace their full nature. And the Colonel is very much like Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender, in the sense that both of them have this high duty and honor to their nation, and they want to capture the person that is a hindrance to that nation. But they're also realizing that the world is so much bigger and so much more beautiful than what they thought it was, and there's this internal conflict within them. I thought the dynamics of the different characters between the first two films and this one were done great, especially with the women, mainly Neytiri and Renal. But there's this moment where Jake tells Neytiri to stay back and protect the children, and Neytiri's just like, no, I fly. And on the surface, it's looked at like, here's this badass that wants to fight by her husband, protect her kids, protect our people. But James Cameron did the exact same thing in the second film when the village leader of the Metcaina people told his wife Renal to stay back because she's pregnant, and she said, nah, I fly, I fight. And I was like, yo, the fact that James Cameron did the exact same thing in two different films with these two different characters to really highlight that these women are not limited and they have so much power within their family and within their own village to be like, I'm going to fight for my people. You can't really do anything about that. Overall, I have to say that Avatar Fire and Ash is easily in my top 5, maybe even top 3. I got to go through my list and really just decide how I'm going to do that. I definitely plan on seeing this again because even though I do think I did a pretty good job dissecting it, this is still a 3.5-hour film. Like, there's so much more to this film that I probably even missed. But I'm curious, have you seen it? And if you have, what did you think of it? Let's get the conversations rolling. And yeah, that's about it.